Hello everyone, how are you doing? This is Lama Fede from TRC, and I wanted to address something that has been popping up lately in my radar, and some people ask me, so I thought, hey, I'll record a video and I'll try to explain it from my own perspective, which is Buddhism a kind of atheism? And I would say, just to get a short answer first, that the way if you ask, is Buddhism an atheism? You are not understanding either atheism or Buddhism. So, let me clarify what I mean by this. First of all, let's start by atheism, right? So, when people talk about atheism, they usually do it within, let's say, European or North American context in relationship to the Christian God, whether it's an evangelical Christian God, or Protestant, or a Catholic. But it's very clearly a denial of someone, of a particular God, right? And it's not a general denial. And this is something that is very interesting, because I myself, I was born in Argentina, a country that used to be very Catholic, and all the people in the generation before me, my parents, my grandparents, they were Catholics. They were very disappointed with it, so I wasn't raised in a particular faith, and then I became a Marxist and Buddhist. So when you ask me, are you an atheist? Well, then I should try to understand what you mean by atheist. If you ask, hey, do you believe that the God of Christ exists, the God of the Old Testament and the New Testament, and He is all that there is, it's present, I would say no. But that does not mean that I don't believe that something is there, right? A particular Deva still exists on Trayadrimsa that has power. The problem is, for Buddhists like myself, gods are not something to aspire to. When one says a Deva, it's not exactly the same thing that when a Christian or a Jewish man or woman says, this is a god, right? This is God, this is Adonai. No, it's not the same. Devas in Buddhism are beings that usually are powerful, like almost like feudal lords, and you can petition them. But they're not transcendent. They do not have a way to escape nirvana. So if they don't have a way to escape nirvana, or if they don't have a way to save all beings in the Anuttara Samyak Body, essentially they are stuck in samsara, just like you and me. Yes, most Buddhisms agree that there are some gods, and these gods change and live and die, but they're just as stuck within samsara as we are. So what's the point of worshipping them? Working with them, sure. Paying them for things, sure. But not exactly worshipping. So it is an atheism? Well, for me, there are two categories, right? Atheism is clearly something that arose, the idea of atheism as, let's say, per Dawkins, right? It's something that arose in response to a Christian belief, and it's a negation of an universal principle that the universal principle does not exist in Buddhism. And yet, there exists gods in most of Buddhism, and they are petitioned in most of Buddhism, but they are not worshipped. So it's not clearly a theistical worship, and it's also not a negation, like, say, Western secular atheism. And then you may say, hey, but there are Western secular groups that are Buddhist, and they are very clearly atheistic. They say, I do not believe in past life or future life. I do not believe in any God. I think these are basically mythologies. And I say, this shows how for Buddhism the question of atheism is not a pertinent question. Because you can have Buddhist atheists. You have very religious Buddhists which believe in all kinds of gods, right? It doesn't matter. It's not a core thing of Buddhism. So it's not a core thing, it's more of a personal preference, and also a preference of a tradition and a culture, but it's not the root of it. So the question of whether you are an atheist or not as a Buddhist is not a core question. What are core questions? The four seals, right? Do you understand that everything compound is impermanent? Yes or no? Do you think that there is enlightenment? Yes or no? These are the questions to vigor. It's like the question of evil, another big Christian question. Oh, if God is all powerful and all knowing, how can He allow evil? Really doesn't come up. There is no all powerful, all knowing God. Buddhism, I think he or she or it doesn't allow or not. It's a lot more mechanistic. So the question of evil is less a question of evil and it's more a question about ignorance, right? So you will see that these questions and these categories which you have as universal, atheism, evil, they are not. They're just as cultural as all those things in Buddhism which you perhaps don't believe, like reincarnation or past lives. And why do you think that your categories are universal? It's basically colonialism. Colonialist people have been brought on the belief that their way is the universal way. And this is something I think as Buddhists, and especially if we are Buddhists that do not arise in a traditional Buddhist context, let's say someone who's born in Europe or North America, South America, that was my case, we have to become very aware of, because there is always this temptation to pave over the questions of Buddhism, which are very rich and very much contextual to the tradition, with the questions in the culture of birth. So it's something we have to watch out for. Well, I hope that this has been helpful. So, is Buddhist atheist? It's really not an important question for me. That would be my summation. But let me know what you think in the comments, or I'll take anything. Comments, questions, insults, whatever it is. I think it's important to have this conversation. Thank you so much, and I'll be seeing you around. Sarva Mangalam.